Hi everyone, welcome to another talk time. We're going to be doing for this exciting series a number of conversations around how some theories around psychology intertwine with how we work as hypnotherapists. So today we're really going to, discuss a little bit about how you can hack your habits. A lot of people come in around wanting to break into a different way of being, a different habit, and how behaviourism and hypnotherapy really rewire the brain. So I'm going to have Teresa join us again for our talk time today. So I hope you enjoy this one.
Hi Meredith, hi everybody. I'm really looking forward to this week's topic on can you hack your habits? It should be an exciting adventure.
So when we're kind of looking at the idea of behaviour, and a lot of people come in, they want to change some level of their behaviour. What we have to understand is that in modern psychology, there's been an evolution or an understanding around maybe where behaviours come from. And so if we think about historically, there was this basic understanding where behaviours are learnt from our family, first of all, because it's important to survive. So we'll mirror or we'll match the behaviours of those that are around us to be part of that system. However, sometimes those behaviours aren't very helpful as we grow up, and we might find ourselves in a new environment where those old behaviours really aren't satisfactory and we want to change them. So it feels like it's a big ask sometimes to shift out of an old way of being, old way of thinking, to a new way of thinking. And I think that's where hypnotherapy really can step up. The theory first started way back in the 20th century with John B. Watson, who argued that all behaviours are learnt through interactions with the environment. So this is where we're kind of moving into being curious about our client. What are your thoughts on that, Teresa?
Oh, for sure. I mean, our environment actually has a huge impact on our belief system and how we learn to, master those beliefs that maybe are of others' beliefs, not actually our own, and not until later on in life, maybe when things aren't going quite so well, and we look at it, we realize actually I don't believe that. Why do I have that belief system?
I think too, if we think about abusive relationships and we're growing up with a toxic parent or a dysfunctional family of sorts, to your young brain, that was normal because you didn't have any other way of understanding what other people were going through. So it's not until you leave home and maybe have a sort of a look into how other people's family just talk about things or treat each other that you realize, oh, actually mine wasn't that great. So I'm sure some of you out there would relate to that, where there was a bit of a wake-up moment if you have kind of gone through your own personal trauma growing up and being around behaviours or having people who are meant to be caregivers, really fail in that task.
And I guess I'd like to say as well that we're not necessarily putting that blame on our caregivers or our parents, because times have changed and parenting has changed, or our understanding of the impact the way that we parent our children has on them, especially in the first 7 to 8 years. And their brains are like little sponges and suck up all that information. They're not just little children that don't understand and don't take it in. In fact, when they're young, they take in possibly more than what they do as they get older, and as we do find it easier to absorb that information, whether it's negative or positive. But also to bear in mind, like you were saying, generational beliefs that are passed down from down the generations, and people just think that's normal, so they don't actually see that they're doing anything wrong in passing that belief down or the way that they behave.
And quite often it could be, they read a book about something and they have this aha moment. And I had a client the other day who, for a very long time had been quite a toxic parent and very dictator kind of orientated, where he'd tell his children how they were to do something, and they didn't really have a voice at all in the family. And he realized, oh, I'm just like my dad, and I don't want to be like that. When something happened between an interaction with his dad, it sort of was a wake-up point. And so now he's on a journey to really change the way he's behaving around his children. However, because they've been used to him behaving a certain way for all this time, it's a bit hard for them to respond to him in a new way.
It's also a bit like, a parent might think they're doing the best thing by saying to them, oh, did you only get like 90%? Why didn't you get 95% in that exam? Thinking they're actually encouraging their child to better themselves and to excel. But the child could be thinking, why am I never good enough? It doesn't matter how hard I do or how well I go. I just don't seem to ever please mum or dad. I'm never good enough. So then you take on that negative belief, which perhaps wasn't intended to be that way.
Yeah, and that's where, when we think about B.F. Skinner, he explained the Watson's ideas a little bit more and introducing that idea of reward system. So if, for example, let's say you've got a teenage kid and you're going, oh, look, if you tidy up your room, I'll take you out to dinner. So you've got this kind of reward system. But the dinner, he has to eat anyway, and he doesn't probably mind whether it's out to dinner or not. It's like, okay, the parent is trying to leverage good behavior, but they may fall short on celebrating the child when they haven't had to be forced to do it. So there's this reward system all the time of, a barter, like if you do this, we can do this. And that sets up a person in a really weird way out in the real world, where they don't get excited because they're not getting positive, real excitement as a reward for something that they've done. Instead, they might be met with that criticism that, well, it's good, but next time, hey, how about you focus on, so it's almost dismissed. So at times when we're interacting with people, that reward part is really crucial. And if we have been rewarded in maybe not so great ways, that's something we can start to reprogram as adults. We can start to kind of have our own inner cheerleader pop up in our mind and reinforce the kind of behaviour we would like us to exhibit, if you like. What are your thoughts on that reward system and behaviour, and how that can be, I guess, influenced?
It can go either way, can't it? Just like you were saying, it can actually work and achieve, especially with young children. Oh, yeah, I'm going to go and get a little toy if I do this so many times, and they work towards it in a positive way. But then it can also backfire that later on that they think, well, why should I do that? Because I'm not getting rewarded for doing that, so I'm going to go and do something else. And a belief that if they're going to be good or do something, they have to be rewarded by getting something out of it for them.
Yeah. So having a person seek external gratification is maybe the outcome of that, right? So they're always looking outside for approval, or I'm good because I got high scores in my schooling, and therefore I must be worthy enough of my parents' praise. But it has to really, at the end of the day, be, what do you want to do to reward yourself? Like what is that internal like little celebration? And that's really important, because as we get older, let's face it, we become invisible and less people acknowledge you, because they think, well, you're all right, you're good at that. So they don't bother saying, hey, you're amazing, you're really good at that. Whereas when we're younger, we're more likely to get praise from people because they know maybe it's new for us or something. So at the beginning of that journey, we get really well praised. But as we get more and more into the journey, we suddenly see or hear less and less praise coming. And that might seed doubt in the person's feeling of worthiness.
I mean, I get some people that come in that think that their beliefs are actually making them who they actually are. What are your thoughts on that, Meredith?
Yeah, well, your behaviors aren't really who you are. Your pure potential and your behaviors are just a result of, I guess, programming. But you're not your program. So program can be changed. You're bigger than your program. So I think that's important to think about. And as a hypnotherapist, this is where we come into our sort of power here to help people break away from those old beliefs and programs and really reinforce new beliefs and programs. So definitely you're not your behaviors. They're just things that you have been doing as a result of stimuli.
Mm. And one of the things I try to explain to my clients as well is like our brain is a powerful tool. It takes in so much information. Every second it's taking so much more than we can even account, sight, sounds, smells, and in the distance close to you, etc. And you only actually focus on a certain amount of that information that's taken, that you take in. And the brain likes familiar stuff, so it often goes back to familiar. So if you're familiar and looking in the negative side, your brain will go that way. That's how your thoughts will go. If you're familiar and looking on the bright side, then generally that's the way that you will lean to.
I often talk to my clients about where attention goes, energy flows. Okay, so if we want to water a new intention, a new way of being, like it, new behavior, new belief, new experience, outcome, emotion, we've got to put energy in there. So we first of all get clear about our intention and then pay attention. Now there are 4 stages of learning. There is unconscious incompetence. So let's use the analogy of learning how to drive a car. It's a bit like the equivalent of learning to drive our emotional vehicle. Okay, so at first the person sits in the driver's seat and they go to turn on the ignition, but not sure how because they've never done it before. They're not sure which gear to be in or where to put their feet and a whole lot of things they've never done before. So suddenly they're understanding what was unconsciously incompetent, like they really didn't know what they didn't know until they turn up and test their knowledge, and then they slip into conscious incompetence. They suddenly have a list of things they're really not good at yet. That list might be quite long too, but every time they practice, something magical happens and they get better and better at all of these little tasks and they slip into conscious competence. Okay, so you start with unconscious incompetence, you slip into conscious incompetence, so now you've got a list of all the things you're not good at and you have to practice, and then you move into that practice mode, rinse and repeat, and you're starting to move towards excellence. You're moving towards learning that better and better every time. So when we're looking at the final stage, it hasn't happened yet, that unconscious competence. When we're in conscious competence, it means we could be interrupted and we might revert to stalling the car. We might revert to forgetting to indicate because we were flustered. But eventually we get into unconscious competence, that a thing can happen and we know how to override that first response of fright and do the right thing. So if we imagine driving our emotional vehicle in the same way, it's a journey of learning. And that's often an analogy that I use with my clients. What are your thoughts on that, Teresa?
Yeah, definitely. Exactly. And I mean, after all, our brain just wants to protect us. So if we've been doing something in a certain way for a certain time, it feels like it's protecting us. So sometimes that change can seem a little bit scary to shift us from a negative way into a more positive way. But again, the more you do that, the easier it becomes. Then your mind just suddenly starts working on that way, because that now becomes the familiar path of move. Just like driving a car, as you say, and when we begin, we stall, we bunny hop, and you forget to indicate, or you get flustered, I haven't looked in the mirror, and then you pull out before you look behind you and things like that. But give yourself a chance, that opportunity to practice, go out again and again. And before even you pass your test, you do that smoothly, and you just do it without even thinking about it. It becomes habit.
And this is where I think any new behavior has to have bedding in time, but hypnosis can accelerate that bedding in time. So we can allow the client to imagine that it's already happened, that today, from this moment on, it's as if they're an expert. We can embed really direct, clever suggestions into that hypnotic journey with them that can hammer home that shift in behavior so they see immediate results. I think that's the difference between maybe standard talk therapy, where we're talking about the behavior, we're thinking about the brainstorm, but we haven't conditioned it yet. It hasn't gone into that autopilot yet, but with hypnosis we have the ability to fast forward a lot of that learning and embed really clear suggestions and disconnect the old program, so we can get a client to imagine maybe destroying the old program in some creative way, or we might distort or change the program so much it can't play the way it used to. We can engage that imagination in really clever ways when we're working with clients. Well, how do you go about some of the ways that you might interrupt a pattern and a conditioned response with that behavior in hypnosis?
Just before I answer that one, I was going to say this, I think, is where it's really important that we actually do unpack with our client and we listen to what their words are, because we all wear different glasses or view the world through a different lens, if you want to look at it that way. So when I watch the news, say, for example, I will take away something completely different to when you look at the news. There'll be main parts that we take about, but we'll have a different aspect of what that same story was told. So I think that's clear, to explain to people that's okay. So make sure you get their words of what they're actually wanting for positive change, because what I see as being positive and how to change, I don't know, anxiety or something could be completely different to what my client is sitting in the chair wanting as an end result. So I think that's a really good thing to actually look out for their words and terminology, as we've said before, to use. And sorry, the question was, how would I go about using pattern interrupt, wasn't it?
Yeah, reinforcing, sort of diminishing that old pattern, that kind of thing. Have you got some go-tos that you use with clients?
Yeah, so we'd talk about, imagine what it would be like if you no longer went, if you no longer did this in that way. How would that look like if you changed your thoughts or feelings? For example, I had a client that came in and she hated the rain, literally hated the rain. And every time it rained, it really changed her mood to a point where she was really getting quite depressed and down about it. So we talked about the rain, and she felt it was cold and dark and dank and just really pulled her down. And I asked her, well, how do you think somebody would feel that lived in the desert and they suddenly started to see the rain fall? What would it be like for them? And she then started to give her ideas of what it would feel like for those that she thought it could be. And we looked at and examined, and basically at the end she said, I'd never thought of the rain. Yes, for me it's a nuisance, it pours, but also if we don't have the rain, it doesn't nourish the ground. Things don't grow, they start to die. So she started by having this sort of internal shift about the positives as well as the rain. So yes, too much can be not enough. But
so a nice reframe there to diminish the old program belief.
Yeah. And I guess that for your pattern interrupt, we might be discussing something that might start going down into a negative rabbit hole. So then I'd just put a question into them and ask them, so did you actually drive here today? How did you get here? What was the type of car? And change the mind. And then we perhaps go back and start talking about what we had talked to a few minutes ago. And then hopefully you've taken out some of that negative rabbit hole spiral that we all start to go into, and you can bring yourself back up and start changing it again.
Yeah. So just to reinforce pattern interrupts, we have actually done some other talks on our talk time about NLP and pattern interrupts and really what they are. One of the nice ones, I think, was when we're doing stacking anchors. So if you look back at that one, you'll see and hear me using the pattern interrupts often, where we're just changing the topic, and it helps a person change their state out of their undesired state or even desired state into something neutral, and then we can go and test that desired state and that strength of that desired state. So it's helping a person also be agile. If you can change your state really instantly, it's a good thing to get into, because if you wake up in the morning and you're in a really foul mood, if you know that in an instant you can change into a better mood, well, that's quite powerful for a client to understand. So when we're doing that in a session, it's very effective. It associates and dissociates as well. So a pattern interrupt can have that element. So you're associating out into the moment where you want the person to imagine positive things, and then dissociate by just taking them out to something else that they've remembered or whatever, and you're disassociating from that future or that idea, and then you pop them back in again so they get to feel it again. And each time they visit that positive thing after those interrupts, it can often build it stronger and stronger and stronger. It's like worry. It works in the opposite as well. So if someone gets interrupted and they were worrying about their flight, let's say they had a fear of flying, and that was a normal pattern or phobia that they have built over a period of time, they might do a whole lot of things, but immediately come back to thinking and fixating about that awful flight coming up. And so what they're doing accidentally is a pattern interrupt, but then reinforcing the wrong program. And of course, the behaviours then mean that they're going to behave very nervously, and they're going to get anxious and so on, and maybe not even get on that flight. So yeah, as a hypnotherapist, we work with these little wee subtle techniques all the time. So if you are interested, go back and listen to some of our other talk time things, and we just explain these little wee I guess concepts a bit more thoroughly.
Definitely. Yeah.
So have you got any questions for me, Teresa, today about, I guess, behaviourism and how it sits in with hypnotherapy that we haven't maybe discussed or covered yet?
Is there a common thread that you would see? I know everybody and every session's unique, but was there a common thread that you would see that people in particular would come to you about their behaviourism to try and
Yes, procrastination.
Okay. Yeah.
Huge. I'd say that's one of the most dominant reasons why people come in to change their behaviour around how they go and action stuff. So things that they really want to get done. So emotionally, they're wanting to get fit, or emotionally, they're wanting to write that book or start that business or do whatever it is. But for whatever reason, that procrastination energy interrupts it. And so I guess how I'd go about that is exploring what's behind the procrastination. So what's stopping them? And that could be potentially, and more common than not, fear of failing or fear of change. Like, I'm not sure how that would be if. So this is where I think if we identify what's the cause or the base of that procrastination behavior, and how far back does it go, because that may well be some pre-programming from a very long time ago where they may have felt disappointed and they want to avoid disappointment again, and they didn't get that reward that they needed maybe as a child growing up, so therefore they just kind of unplugged and go, well, what's the point, why bother? So a lot of people do that. They feel like the imposter, even though they're fully qualified in something, and that can cause them to procrastinate on taking action and really progressing their career in some way. So it can definitely interfere in many ways.
I guess that's where it'd be a good opportunity to perhaps look at modelling as well, somebody else's that's successful in their behaviour. Did you want to explain that a little bit more to our listeners?
Definitely. When we're kind of looking at modelling success rather than average, modelling excellence rather than average, I think it's nice to look into, let's say you want to behave in a healthy, loving way in your relationship. You might not understand what that means. So it's important that you go out and think, is there someone that I know of, or have I read a book or seen a movie or done something where someone's modeling their excellence there? And could I do more of that? Like, could I start some behaviors that might be in line with that I'm seeing them do and get response, positive feedback from? Because I think sometimes, again, we get stuck in that accidental pattern where we've taken a model from our parents and how they might have had a relationship, or it's been accidental and it's not really a deliberate, positive experience that we're going through. It's just been a survival. Like, I've stumbled into this relationship. I have no idea how to be in a relationship. So go read some books. Go find out what a really amazing relationship might be like, and start to model that you're reading about. Go, okay, let's run that experiment.
Another thing I think that's really good to actually talk about with your clients, the way they talk to themselves. I should, I would, I can, I will, those sort of things about our terminology that we actually use and the impact that has on the way we move forward and the things that we actually do. What are your thoughts?
For sure. Look, I drill down also where we are in time, like I used to, because anything that you've done in the past is just a memory file now. It's not necessarily what you're going to do tomorrow or the next day. That's pure potential. It hasn't been written yet. So I think with clients, it's important to go, had been, so far, was, used to, now you are, what do you want to do? And get them really brainstorming what that excellence means, what that looks like, sounds like, feels like.
I like, example of that. I learned this years ago from you, when people say always, I'm always late. And I always remember you say, always? You're never early, you're never on time, you've always been late. And when you actually then start to think about it, it's like, oh, maybe I'm not always late. Yeah. And that's
that challenger question is perfect. I think in a therapeutic space, it's really important that you're on the lookout for what we call a universal quantifier statement of belief, which is what that is. So that's an overgross exaggeration of a position. So never, nobody, ever, everyone, right?
Words really have power, and I'm sort of being mindful about our time and that, looking at it ticking away. But in my opinion, our words really give power to our belief systems and our behaviourisms. Even if we're just thinking about it, that gives power or takes away power.
Yeah, so when we're hacking our habits, and we're helping our clients break theirs and really get into the habit of excellence, the behaviour of excellence, this is huge. So look, hypnotherapy is an amazing career. If you're interested in learning more, you can visit our school, which is www.nzach.ac.nz. We'd love to be your guide, and we're coming up with a series. So we've got a number of other topics that we're going to talk about, these psychological theories and how they intersect with hypnotherapy, how we utilize them. So, tune in next week. We'd love to have you on board for another talk time. The other thing is too, would you like to take over?
Yep, please press that like, share and subscribe button. You'll get notifications to our wonderful podcast, and please do leave a comment or email us and we will get back to you. If you don't want to be named, that's fine, but yeah, we would love to interact with some of you listeners.
And good news, the offer that I did last week, we had someone pop up and said, I would like to be a client. So I'm going to be starting with her tomorrow. I'm going to record our journey, and then you'll get to watch that after the series. I'll share that with you, all you guys out there, and you can sort of see how a session goes from beginning to end. But not just one session. I'm going to really roll out a series of sessions and break down what I've done as well. So it's a really good learning opportunity for you out there if you are interested in sort of hopping on board and seeing what a session actually is like from beginning to end, because it's a bit hard if you haven't experienced your own hypnotic journey, and it's just an idea that you might have to become a hypnotherapist, but you don't really know what it's all about. That example hopefully will give you a little bit of an insight into what it's all about to work with people in that way. Yeah, so I'm really excited.
Yep, so it's going to be an exciting journey. So please remember, tune in next week, subscribe, and you'll get that notification and won't miss the episode.
Nice. Thank you, Teresa, and bye, everyone.
Thanks, bye. Have a good week.